Welcome back, everyone. This is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage, getting ready to show you what I'm going to do. There's very little to do here, but I do want to look at these discs, and there's a reason that I believe that if you're going to restore a machine, just go through the whole thing, right? We don't do it halfway. It takes longer, but now you'll know everything is done. If my customer in the future would ever have an issue with tension, it's very unlikely it would be because of the assembly, because I've looked in it, everything's there, and we're going to clean it up a bit. This machine was sewing a really nice stitch without this, but again, I'm doing this to ensure that that this will be an heirloom quality machine. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the discs and I'm going to take some alcohol on my swab here, and I'm basically going to go on the back and see if any of this is oil. There's definitely grime. There may be a little oil here. And then I'm going to go on that inside rim where I see what I think is some light oxidation. Now, if you have any metal parts, particularly your tension discs, and if you see something like this, don't panic, because actually this is really not a big deal. Okay, you see that it's coming off. Most of it's coming off on the swab, and this is just, again, 91% rubbing alcohol. That's all I've got. And just get another clean swab and gonna go over it again. Now what this is doing, it's taking off most of what I need to. And then what's left, I'm going to use polish, metal polish. And we'll do the other one here. The great thing is this machine was stored indoors, and so this really is 70 years of probably just moisture. You want to get on the inside rim here too, just in case there's anything. Sometimes the edges of parts like this will have, you may see oxidation on the edge and not anywhere else. So these are very important parts of a machine's functioning, and so I really like to take it seriously and go ahead and take the time, especially when you consider that, Singer's engineers designed, it's obvious, they designed this whole assembly to come apart. Usually if the customer had had any issues with theirs, or I don't think they often did. But again, it was built in a time when things were designed to be repaired. So if you look at them now, you'll see that I have gotten, well, most of that off, but there's a little bit of maybe some micro-sized pitting, and that happens with oxidation, but we're gonna get that cleaned up and fixed as well. So what I want to do, let's see if I have a little paper towel here. The last time I was doing metal polishing, I showed all of you that Mother's, I think it was called a Mother's aluminum wheel polish. It's a metal polish, and it works for a lot of different metals, not just aluminum. And I like to check out and see what other items I might have. This is something called Barkeeper's Friend. And Barkeeper's Friend is a brand of, well, it started out as a brand of cleanser, powdered cleanser in a can, which you definitely would not want to use. But this is a liquid version of it, and it's actually, it functions like a polish. And this is the smallest bottle it came in. This would last a very long time. But I'm just going to shake it up here. It has a really good reputation for working. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take, I can put some on the paper towel here. What I may do is just put a little bit right on the discs that I'm about to polish. I'll just put a few. I don't need much. It doesn't take much. You'll want to wear gloves. I'm not wearing gloves right now, but I would suggest that just because some of these polishes can have, they can be acidic. You just want to take extra care. Some of you may be more sensitive than others. So I'm going to take the polish, and I'm just going to put the discs between my, actually I want to put some on the other side too. Whoops, it's a bit much. Just kind of get it over the surface of these discs. And now I'm going to take the disc one at a time, and I'm just going to start rubbing this polish, this barkeeper's polish, into the metal. Now, there are times when if you polish something, you may find that after you've polished it, you may still see a few little pit marks in the metal. If you do, you can always take 600 or 800 grit sandpaper, very fine. That's almost the wet dry stuff. Not rough sandpaper, but it needs to say 600 or 800 grit. You may not find that at a home center. You may want to go to a hardware store, but you can find it. It's not expensive. They use it to sand cars. Now, what you're seeing is a very shiny tension disc. You see that on the back there. And again, always go on the rim. Check the rim because it's easy to forget that there could be oxidation there. But I don't have any pitting here that warrants the sanding. And now you can see I have a really shiny tension disc here. Let's see if it's gonna, there we go. And I'll do the other one right quick. It's not taking me any time. And then I'll do one last thing to get this this pair of discs ready to go back in the assembly. And I'll show you a little trick to help future-proof it from having any issues with oxidation in the future. Again, you know, they held up pretty darn well for 70 years. But again, when you have a machine of this quality and it's an heirloom device, you know, let's get it ready. Let's, as one of my viewers told me, I'm so grateful that they helped me with, they suggested I use the term conservation, which I hadn't really thought of, but that makes a lot of sense actually. Now I'm going to take one of my Q-tips here, and I'm going to, which one do I want? I'm going to put a little bit of that barkeepers on it. There was a spot here. I want to kind of rub it a bit with that cotton swab. Sometimes you can, you'll polish something and that'll help you see any remaining spots. Okay, so now I have two shiny tension discs. You guys saw that it didn't really take any time at all. They're looking great. So what do I want to do to kind of future-proof them so that they don't have any more oxidation issues? What I'm going to do, and this should not surprise any of you because, as you know, cotton swabs and sewing machine oil are the two things you're going to buy the most in this hobby. So what I'm going to do here is pretty simple. I'm going to get myself a little Kleenex. Okay, now before I use the Kleenex, I'm going to take, where's my sewing machine oil? I'm going to take sewing machine oil. And I'm going to, now remember, I had just mentioned to you guys, people should never ever oil their tension assembly when they're just using it to, you know, sew with their machine. This is not, let me repeat, this is not a normal oiling point for normal sewing machine maintenance. This is a restoration technique. So I want to make sure you guys know that. If you have one of these machines and it's sewing grade and you want to sew on it, don't oil this, okay? So I'm going to take a few drops just on the discs right now. I'll turn them over, put a couple more here. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go back and I'm going to take a Kleenex, it's really soft, and I'm just going to start buffing the tension discs. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to remove 90% or more of the oil I just put on them, right? Why am I doing that? Because by using the Kleenex, I'm going to leave a very almost microscopic layer film of oil. It's not oily in the sense that it's not going to bother your thread at all. It's not going to interfere with your fabric and your sewing, but it's just a little tiny, just a bare minimum film of oil. And what that's going to do is it's really going to kind of give your metal, in this case the tension disc, but you could do this on any of the metal parts. It gives them kind of a little bit of a proofing against future rust, right? That little microscopic film of oil is going to block any of the any moisture or oxygen that typically can cause oxidation over, you know, decades, right? So again, this is one of those little details that if you're going to pay for a sewing machine that's been restored, you really should, you know, you should find out when someone says it's been overhauled. What did they do? So now I have these two beautiful, polished, and very high quality. These are the original Singer parts. And so now those are ready. What else did I mention that we would do before we get ready to reassemble this? Let's see, let me zoom in here and I'll show you guys. Again, this is that threaded shaft that everything sits on, and I'm just going to, that part actually doesn't have any oil. And I'm inspecting, there's no rust and there's really nothing at all on this shaft, but I'm going to put just 1, 2 at the most drops of sewing oil on the threads, which are on the outer third of this little shaft, and you can probably see it a little bit better there. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to put everything back in the order it went. So there you go, guys. That's getting the parts ready to reassemble. And then the next video, I will actually show you all how to reassemble the tension assembly. And oh, by the way, not to forget this piece here. This piece here doesn't have any oxidation, but it does have a little bit of staining. I don't know, maybe it's old oil or something. So we'll go ahead and get that cleaned. Didn't want to leave that out there. And like I say, it cleans right up. It's not, sometimes you might find oxidation on this part. It's always possible, but again, as I showed you with the discs, it's not difficult to remove it. And there's a little bit of old, who knows what that is in there, a little old oil or dirt or lint. Not a lot. You know, we're talking really, we're splitting hairs here, but I think if you're going to buy a restored sewing machine, the person who did the restoration should split a few hairs, and you know, to be able to really conserve the machine that you are going to have. And I'll go ahead and put a little bit of, I'll just put a drop here of sewing oil, and then again I'll spread it around this part. The reason you've got to take most of this oil that you put on back off with the Kleenex is simply that if you don't, remember what we've talked about before, that oil is like a magnet for dust, and you don't want that, right? So we just want that little oily film to kind of protect this very important part of the machine. And again, this thing may not have been opened up since 1950, right? So there you go. So let me pan back out. And so there you go, guys. We've got our parts ready. This was relatively simple. Sometimes you'll get more oxidation. But anyway, stay tuned for the next video where we put it all back together. Thanks for watching.